presented by Hazel. She will be presenting on combining science, education, and the community for the conservation of Nigeria's montane forests, which is organized by us at Embrace the Earth. My name is Shelley Choi, the Environmental Projects Coordinator for Embrace the Earth, and I'll be moderating today's session. Today, Professor Hazel Chapman will be giving this webinar, and at the end of the presentation, we can ask her any questions we might have or have them in the chat and she will address them at the end. So first of all, I would like to introduce our speaker, Professor Chapman. She's a research ecologist with particular interest in tropical forest conservation and restoration, plant-animal interactions, and the ecology of plant invasions. She's the founder and director of the Nigerian Montane Forest Project at Taraba State, and she's based at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. At the University of Canterbury, she teaches evolutionary biology, evolutionary ecology, invasion ecology, and conservation biology. She's an active lab group with the postgraduate students working in both Nigeria and New Zealand, and most recently our colleague in our collaboration together with the Nigerian Forest Project. So thank you very much, Professor Chapman, for being here today and for sharing your work at the Nigerian Montane Forest Project. So I would like to give the floor to you and to hear about the great work you're doing on the project.
Thanks very much, Shelley, and thank you all from Embrace the Earth for inviting me to give this talk. So I'll just go ahead and let's hope it all works out. I'm a bit nervous now. So I'll try and share my screen. Great. Can everyone see that all right?
Yes, it's visible.
Good. Okay. So yes, so today I'm going to talk about the Nigerian Montane Forest Project and hopefully give you a bit of background as to how this, which I think is quite a unique project, has come about and why it works out. But I'd also like to share some of the issues that we have because it isn't all plain sailing. So as Shelley said, I'm based at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and working in Nigeria is the research part of my job. So I'm very lucky in that I've been able to combine both, because New Zealand is a very long way from Nigeria, but it's worked out. So I thought I would start by just giving some background about Nigeria, because not everyone has been to Nigeria. So you can see the map there, it's in West Africa, and it's got this country, it's a large country, but it occupies only 15% of West Africa, and yet it's home to about at least 56% of West Africans. So it's hugely populated with a population of over 200 million and a growth rate of at least 3% per annum. So it's basically one of the most densely populated and fast-growing populations in Africa. And this obviously leads to huge demands on the environment and conflict, often between people and nature, or people and the natural environment. Now, I'm going to be talking about a particular part of Nigeria, which is the Afro-Montane, or the mountainous region. First of all, though, just to put it in perspective, some background on Africa's mountains. And if you look at this map of Africa, you can see that most of the mountains are on the east side of the country. So you've got the Ethiopian highlands, you've got the Rift Valley, the East African Rift, so you've got Malawi and Kenya and Tanganyika. And then you go down south again on the east side of Africa, you've got the South African massifs. However, about between 3,000 and 4,000 kilometers away, you have another area of mountains, which is the Cameroon volcanic line. And that's what we're going to be thinking about today. Now, most of Africa, you can see from this map, is relatively flat. And it's fascinating the ecology of the mountain areas. For example, if you look at the plant species composition of the Ethiopian highlands, in the Malawi mountains, for example, the Angolan highlands, you'll find that the species that grow on these mountains are far more closely related and often the same species as you find right over here, thousands of kilometers away on the Cameroon volcanic line. So there's a flora that is known as the Afromontane flora, specific just to African mountains. And there's been lots of work done to try and explain how this has come about. And one of the leading hypotheses, and there's quite a lot of evidence to back this up, is that in past historical time, the climate has been such that this intermediate area that is now flat and dry was once much colder. And therefore, there's been stepping stones along the way of cool climate that has allowed gene flow of these species to move across Africa. So yeah, so we're concentrating on this area here. So okay, so obviously they're interesting in that they have their own flora and fauna associated with these higher areas of Africa. Why are they so important and interesting? Well, they've got a unique biodiversity and they're very high in endemism. So that is species that are just associated with African mountains. And in fact, some of these different massifs that I've shown you on that map, they have their own species. So they've actually evolved on the mountain and are just found on a particular mountain. Montane forests store more carbon per unit area than the Amazonian forests. And some of the understanding about that has come from our forest in Nigeria. They are very important ecosystem providers. For a start, they store a lot of carbon. They're also the source of fresh water in Nigeria. These forests are the source of rivers that feed into the River Niger, for example. They are home to insects that control pests, also insect pollinators. So they provide a lot of really important ecosystem services for people. They're rich in birds, and I'll just say along with all this is that in Nigeria, the montane forests are the most threatened forest type in the country. So we really do need to take them seriously and do what we can to conserve them. Very, very briefly, oh yeah, so this is where we're working. And I'm just going to tell you a very brief story about this Metarungia. Can you see this plant down the bottom? It's a shrub. I've only seen it in Nigeria in one forest quite close to where we work, where it covers, I don't know, about 25 meters in length, about 25 meters square. You just see it there. I've never seen it in any other forest in Nigeria. And I know the area well. So I found it, we collected it, sent it to the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew in London, where they have experts on this flora. And I was told, oh, I think you found a new species. So this was very exciting. We thought we'd found a new endemic species of Metarungia. But then a few months later, we got an email from Kew saying, actually, Hazel, this is exactly the same species that occurs in the East African mountains. Isn't that amazing? Like it's not as if it's common in Nigeria, just this one forest. So how did it get there? I just had to say, I think it's just such an interesting story and it needs more investigation. But I mean, so that's maybe talking about long distance dispersal. So I just thought I should give you a little bit of background because you might wonder why on earth someone from New Zealand is working in Nigeria. So my interest in Nigeria started in the 1970s because my father worked in this part of Nigeria. He was a forest botanist, and he worked there for 8 years, surveying the forests and their botany. And these are some of the pictures from the book that I co-authored with him in 2000, uh, talking about the forests and the species that were found in them. So that was like the first real, I don't know, taxonomic description of what these forests contained. And I was just quite young, but I loved living there and I learnt a lot from my dad about these forests, and I'd never forgotten them. So then in 2002, I was at the University of Canterbury, where I work, and I had a sabbatical year. And so I got together a small group of biologists, there were 5 of us, and we collaborated with the Nigerian NCF, Nigeria Conservation Foundation, and Nigerian National Parks. And together we were a group of 12, and we did a 50-day trek around the forests of Taraba and Adamawa states where my father had worked. And what we did was we went back to these forests. So that was like nearly 30 years later. And we asked the questions. Okay, so I didn't even know, would the forest still be there? 30 years is a long time, and there has been a lot of increase in human population since then, a lot of farming. We didn't know. So most of these forests are in really remote areas, hence the trekking. And it was a fascinating 50 days. And these are the sorts of landscapes that we traversed. I think you can see here that's the same place that the pictures taken previously in the 1970s. And what we found was that the forests themselves were relatively unchanged, particularly in the montane areas, actually only in the montane areas. They didn't look as if they'd been logged. They hadn't really been affected badly by the increase in population pressure. But what we did find that there had been a dramatic reduction in wildlife, especially large-bodied vertebrates. For example, buffalo, which used to be common in the 1970s, we didn't see a single buffalo. Chimpanzees in the 1970s were abundant in these forests, and again, we didn't see a single one. We heard 1 or 2, but not many at all. So basically, these forests over those 30 years had become almost empty forests. They didn't have the wildlife that they used to have. So clearly they weren't fully functioning ecosystems. Now, one of these forests was relatively close to a road. It was within about 40 minutes walk of the road. And that was Ngilnyaki Forest Reserve. And this is a picture of the forest here. And here is Misa Zubaru and Augustine and Tim. Now, Misa and Augustine were our guides when the group of 12, as I said, arrived at this forest. And Misa is here. I can see him. He is listening to this. Hi, Misa. He is listening to this webinar just now. Now, if it wasn't for Misa and Augustine, there wouldn't be a Nigerian Montane Forest Project. They met me at the forest and were our guide. And from then on, I worked with Misa and Augustine. So after 2002, the next Easter, I came back, and we decided between us that this would be a great research site for forest ecology research to try and understand these montane forests. And this is just showing you where our project is based. So I've said Ngilnyaki Forest Reserve. This is just from Google Earth, and you can see The forests are they're very on steep escarpment edges where they're protected from burning and grazing. Because I guess you would have noticed by now that all these forests that I've been talking about have very abrupt edges between grassland and forest. And that's mainly because they are on steep slopes. And anywhere that's flat tends to be grazed by cattle. And I think probably in the past, in some places they would have been logged as well. So that and fire has huge influence. So only where they're protected do these forests remain. And in here, this is the boundary of the forest reserve, which is 46 square kilometres. But there's very little real forest, okay? So this is about 7.5 kilometres squared here. And then there's a little bit of extra, about another 5 square kilometres in Kurmandanko over there. But this is where we're working. So we're kind of in a network of grasslands and cut over savanna. And we're at an elevation of 1,600 meters. Now, this forest, although it's small, it's actually home to diverse animals and plants. We've got a small population of chimpanzees. Oh, sorry. We've got large populations of putty-nosed monkeys, which are very endearing with their white putty nose. And this is quite a rare subspecies. And our chimpanzees are also a rare subspecies, which are only found in this part of Nigeria and Cameroon. We've got tantalus monkeys here, which are relatively common, and they're kind of like weedy monkey species, but they play their role in ecosystem functioning. And then we have turacos, several species of turacos, big birds, hornbills. So those are just some of the animals in the forest. We also have species that are new to science that we've found since we've been working here. For example, we found about 19 new species of dung beetle, which have been identified by people from the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. We found new amphibians of frogs. Here we've got at least 2 new frog species, and they were found like within a week. So I'm absolutely certain there's a whole lot more amphibians, and this was found. I think this one was actually by my dad in the 1970s. So really rich fauna there to look at. We found a new tree, and again there are several new trees that still haven't. We know they're new to science, but they haven't been identified yet. So those are the animals and plants. What about the stakeholders in all of this? Well, the stakeholders fall into, from my point of view, 2 main groups. Obviously, Misa knows a lot more about this than I do, but for the purpose of this talk, I'm just talking about 2 main groups. So there's the mainly subsistence farmers, who are they're really the indigenous people. They're the Mambilla people, the Kaka people, and there are other minority groups as well. And they are mainly and traditionally subsistence farmers. So they make a living from their farms, and their farms are small, and most of them are just big enough to feed family and have local bartering system. Then the other group of people are the Fulani herders, and the Fulani herders have come in, and when they first came to this part of Nigeria, the Mambilla Plateau, is not very well documented, but I think it was around the 1800s. And so the Fulani are a major group in West Africa, and they tend to be nomadic or semi-nomadic. They're becoming less so with climate change and with people increasing populations, but they tend to move with the rains. So they move down south following the rains and then back up again for grazing for their cattle. On Mambilla, however, they tend to not be so nomadic. The people that own the Fulani that own the cattle are actually very wealthy, and some of them have quite big ranches now. And so there's quite a disconnect here between the farmers and the Fulani, because generally speaking, the Fulani have the money, and because they have the money, they have the power. And yeah, so it's difficult. But with our project, and thanks to Misa, who knows these people well, we employ people from the different Mambilla and Kaka and other indigenous tribes, and we also employ Fulani. And that has made a huge difference to the running of our project. So this was just to show the people a little bit more. So these are little boys just to show the kind of way of life. So this is carrying firewood from a eucalyptus plantation. Women cropping. Women do a lot of work in this part of Africa. And sorry, there they are with Mambilla baskets, carrying maize on their backs, really heavy. And these are two of the old village elders. And then these are pictures again of the Fulani. So everywhere you go on the Mambilla Plateau, where it's not our reserve, it looks vaguely like this. So you can see really densely overgrazed grassland, and most of the grass is sporobolus. So this grass has been introduced to the plateau by the cattle, and it's not good. It's not good for the cattle. It's not nutritious. It's quite hard, rough grass. And it's burnt regularly to stimulate new growth. And so you have these small patches of forest along stream sides, and then this overgrazed grassland. And a key issue that we have in the forest, in the reserve, is that Fulani want to go into the reserve to burn the forest so they can get more grass for their cattle. And that is a major issue. You've got to tell me if I go on too long. Is that all right, Shelley? Thanks. Please just do, because I could just go on. So just tell me, yeah. So anyway, our early days at Ngulnyaki, so that was about 2003, 2004, we camped, and Misa and Augustine were always with us. And we also had people from Nigerian national parks came along and helped as well. And even when we were camping from the very beginning, Nigerian students from Nigerian universities heard about what we were doing, that we were doing research, and joined us. So that was really great. They were with us from the beginning. Doing research under canvas, or not even under canvas, isn't very efficient. We found that, and in this case, this was our kitchen and our lab. You can see, and there we are pressing specimens, and every time it rained, chaos ruled. And anyway, so it was holding back our working, being based outside all the time. But despite that, in the early days, we established baseline surveys, which have held us in great stead today. So, for example, we cut 18 kilometres of phenology transects, and those are the transects across the forest. Misa was intimately involved in all of that. Do you remember, Misa, the hard work? And we labelled 2,000 trees, and then collected specimens, because in those days we didn't know what many of the trees were, collected them for ID, and sent them to the Royal Botanic Gardens queue for identification. We set up our own herbarium. And every month, all of those 2,000 trees are still today measured for whether or not they're flowering or fruiting, how much fruit they're producing, whether or not they're shedding leaves or producing new leaves or flowering. We also, in those early days, and a lot of this was students' work, carried out a chimpanzee survey, hence we know a lot about the chimps in the forest. And we also did frugivore observations to know what was eating the fruits of the trees and dispersing their seeds. Now, in 2005, again, thanks to Misa Augustine and other local community members, it was decided that we had to have a field station. So at the time, I had no idea how I was going to get money for a field station, but somehow we managed it. It wasn't a lot of money, and the first field station was built completely by the local people. And here you can see I think this was just about the 1st of January 2005, the first bricks. I remember the excitement of the first bricks being made just from the mud outside, and then that it was the first field station. Everything had to be carried in. There's Augustine carrying a mattress, and all the wood all the carpentry and whatever was done literally on site. It was eucalyptus wood from the plantations. Now, once we had a field station, things began to change, and we were able to have Nigerian undergraduates visit and work with us. Nigeria has a really great scheme in that undergraduate students have to spend I think it's just about all undergraduates, have to spend 6 months as part of their degree doing work experience. And so from then on, we've always had at least 6 IT students working with us at any one time. And I think it's been great for the students, and it's also been great for us, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. But just about all these pictures have IT students in them, and they've helped us grow the project. For example, here is Lawrence, who is now a researcher in his own right, and he is measuring functional traits of fruits, and he did a lot of work as part of his IT to help us measure these functional traits. Then we have other IT students learning about the nursery. We have a big plant nursery, and they're learning silviculture, and they also help us raise trees, which we later plant. And then, they've helped in other things as well. I can talk about the seed traps more later if there's time. Eventually, though, we got funding through Chester Zoo and New Zealand Foreign Affairs and Trade for a bigger and a better field station. And actually, this isn't a brand new picture, but this is basically what the field station looks like now. We have solar power. What else do we have? We've got a lab, which I'll show you in a minute. We have everything that a research station needs. We have accommodation in this block here for, that's the lab. We have accommodation here for 20 students at any one time. We've got a TV, so we're well set up. So that's the accommodation block. And you can't see here, but we've got quite a good science building here, and then we've got a library and other offices here. And this is the lab, and this lab was the vision of Gabrielle, who is now one of our science coordinators, and I think Gab's probably listening to this as well. I'm not sure, but anyway, so things have really moved on, as you can see, and this allows us to do some lab work as well as field work. Now, so basically then, the project comprises field assistants and support staff, almost all from the local community. And I'm sorry, I haven't got a recent picture of the group, but most of the people that you see here still work for the project. But I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of Isti. There isn't one of you in this. Sorry about that, but you're very much with us anyway. And so this is the team, and it was just to show how the project is run by these people. There's myself, there's Professor Danladi Umar, who did his PhD with the project, and Iveren Abiem, who also did Dr. Iveren Abiem, who also did her PhD with the project. And those two, one is based in Gombe, Danladi, and Ivy is based in another town in Nigeria, Jos. They're both with universities, and they very much involved in the kind of management and science of the project. But the day-to-day running is through the local people, local staff. And we employ about, I don't know, it must be verging on 50 people in total now, I think. Is that right, Steve?
We have about 54.
54 people. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's really, yeah, it's very good. The field station is almost always full up. We have undergraduate interns that I've mentioned. We have undergraduate field trips from universities. Sometimes we get up to 300 students come and spend a couple of days with the project. We don't have enough room for them. I don't know how many fit into one bed, but anyway, we manage. And we also have visitors from local schools come too. And I'm just going to mention this works really well. The IT students, and there's an IT student, are wonderful in teaching into the local schools. And also when school children come to the project, there will also they teach maths, English, biology, conservation. Now, one thing I haven't said here with the field stations almost always full up, I haven't mentioned my Kiwi students. And that's not fair because in the past they've always played a real major role in all of this. And it worked beautifully in that the Kiwi students would come to Nigeria and have an amazing experience and benefit from Nigerian students' help. And then that would be reciprocated when Nigerians came to New Zealand to do their PhDs, but doing their fieldwork here. But unfortunately, and that was the model of this project, but unfortunately, more recently, there's been, I don't know, Nigeria's got a few troubles with security and whatever, and so I can't now have Kiwi students coming, which is a real shame. Now, engaging with the local community is essential. And so here I was just going to talk a little bit about how we do engage with the community. I just might stop for 1 minute and put the light on. Sorry, it's getting dark here. So one of the early ways in which we really tried to engage with the community was to build a nursery school because the village didn't have a school and it desperately needed one. And so the school was opened in 2009. And how we achieved this was that we worked with other people to get the funding. And so we actually got the funding from ESO and then once we had the funding, then we helped or we organised the building of the nursery school. And this has been a real success. And it's got, I think, at least 300 students, if not more. And it's actually now becoming a primary school as well. But unfortunately, while the number of students has increased significantly, the number of buildings hasn't. And this school desperately needs some help. But it's hugely beneficial to the community. We also have been working with the beekeepers for quite a while. And this is me actually one day just talking to the beekeepers. And since this picture was taken a little while ago, but since then we've made big strides in organising the beekeeping. We've sent beekeepers on courses to improve their methods, learn new beekeeping techniques and using modern hives. And Ridwan Jaffa, who may or may not be listening today, but he has really helped us in Abuja make contacts and look for investors for a honey industry. And at the moment, this is all looking very promising. So the idea is that the beekeepers form a formal cooperative, that they supply honey to us, that we on-sell the honey, and then that the honey be sold as Nigerian Montane honey. So it's not just any honey. It's got a story behind it. It's helping the community. It's helping conserve forests, and hopefully we'll be able to sell it at premium prices. And of course, that will feed back into both the local community and the project, because it's really hard work keeping this project funded. We do the best that we can, but it's always hard. So if we could somehow become self-reliant, that would be wonderful, and that's what we're striving to do. Another thing we do with the community is that we really are working to engage Fulani cattle herders and owners, to get them on our side and to see our point of view, and I guess to see the value, to understand the value of the forest, that once the forest's gone, it's never coming back, and everyone's going to lose. And this here, Gabriel, I'm sorry it's not very clear of you. This is Gabriel Dabo, our science coordinator, and he is speaking to the local Fulani cattle owners, and he's talking about the importance of the forest and about collaborating with us. And one way that we can help, and are trying at the moment to help through the livestock ministry and building connections, is in, for example, foot and mouth. You can see these cattle are, there's lots of grass, there's more grass than you could want to eat, but they've got foot and mouth disease, and so they're terribly skinny, so it's very sad. And so if we can help look after these cattle, and also we want to, and we're looking at ways of, for example, improving grass types that are more suitable to cattle. But there's a huge potential in this space, because the cattle are huge. They've evolved to kind of move around big distances. This has happened before in history, as you know. I mean, that's how cattle moved in Europe years ago, but it isn't feasible in the long term. So if we can help the Fulani in that way, it would be a great thing. Shelley, what time is it? Oh, I've actually got my thing.
We have 8 more minutes, so we can leave 10 minutes for all the questions we have in the end, if that's all right.
That's perfect. That's great. So I just thought briefly I'd mention some of our science. So in 2016, we established a Smithsonian long-term forest plot. So this plot is 20.28 hectares in area. It's in the forest, and basically, in this 20 hectares, every tree is enumerated. So it's measured, it's mapped, it's named, and all the data go into a big database in Washington, with the Smithsonian. And it goes, all our data goes alongside data that has been collected in exactly the same way from forests across the globe. And you can imagine that that's a very powerful data set. And I just thought I'd point out here, these are field assistants who've all done amazing work in the plot. And I mentioned Ivy before, Iverian Abiem. She is the main manager of this plot. And we got money to do this through retired General T.Y. Danjuma. So some of our money has come from philanthropists, which is really important. So anyway, so we've got our long-term forest plot, and that has let us understand the functioning of the Ngulnyaki forest in a way that we couldn't have done without it. So what I haven't said is that all these measurements, which is, it's a huge piece of work to do all this, are carried out every 5 years. So you can see how growth rates change. You can see how species contributions change, and that sort of thing. And so this is very useful for understanding the effect of climate change on these forests as well. And the kind of questions we ask are, for example, what is the likely trajectory of these forests, and Gilnyaki in particular, given climate change, given bushmeat hunting, and increasing forest edges through fragmentation? And we want to know, what can we do to maintain and restore ecosystem functioning? This picture here is just showing some of our patrollers, and that's a dead porcupine, and these are traps. So, the whole time we have to, there's always people trying to hunt in the forest. And as I mentioned before, these forests are almost empty of large-bodied frugivores. So that is going to have an influence on the rest of the forest. So what about climate change? Well, one major study we've done that was just actually published in Ecology this year was looking at phenology. So that is the timing of flowering and fruiting in trees. And so this involved the data collection that I've mentioned previously from those 2,000 trees in the phenology transects, recording monthly whether they're flowering or fruiting, dropping leaves or have new leaves, and also weather data. And this was in collaboration with the University of Exeter. They established a state-of-the-art weather station, so we've got good weather data. And this is Hamasumo, who leads our herbarium and may be listening tonight, and Ali, who I'm very sad to say we have lost. But these guys have just been amazing in collecting these data. And you might be wondering what has happened to phenology. Has climate had an effect? And yes, it has. We've found quite a dramatic increase in leaf fall. So this is leaf fall. It has increased significantly. Production of new leaves has fallen off. This is between 2005 and 2024. We found that number of flowers, this is just overall mean across the forest. I could spend a whole hour talking about this, but just briefly. So this is the mean of all the different trees, all the different species. Flowering has remained about the same, but what is very worrying is that the amount of fruit produced on average has decreased. But that isn't true across all species, and in some species actually the amount of fruit produced has increased. I guess the main thing here is that there's been huge changes, and so if you get changes in all these factors, then that is going to affect everything else in the forest, like the insects that feed on the nectar, the animals that eat the fruits, if you see what I mean. So everything is going to change and get out of sync. And then we've looked at what has happened with our loss of large-bodied frugivores or vertebrates. Has this increased dispersal limitation? You get dispersal limitation when seeds can't be dispersed as they should be. And key to this is that only large-bodied frugivores can swallow large seeds. And we know that elephants have gone extinct locally, black and white colobus have gone extinct, red river hogs have gone extinct, and we only have 16 adult chimpanzees. So those are large-bodied frugivores that have gone or are almost non-existent. So questions that we've asked, for example, is could other large-bodied vertebrates like putty-nosed monkeys or tantalus monkeys replace these guys in particular in terms of seed dispersal? What we found is, to cut a long story short, it doesn't work. They eat different things. And therefore, this puts species in the forest at risk because they're not being dispersed. So there's no overlap. But what we have found in collaboration with Pierre-Michel Forguet from the Museum of Natural History in Paris is that all is not lost. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go into detail. But I can tell you that this rat, the African giant pouched rat, has come to the rescue. And when large seeds fall to the forest floor, these rats first of all predate them, eat them. Then when they're full up, they fill up their huge cheek pouches with seeds, run off and bury them elsewhere. Some of these seeds are therefore effectively dispersed and will grow and germinate. And then just briefly, a real focus at the moment is forest restoration. And we've looked at passive, that's just letting natural dispersal take place, and active tree planting. But for anything to work, we've had to fence off areas around the reserve from grazing and from fire. And every year, we put a lot of effort into planting new trees and keeping fences going and preventing fires coming in. And this just shows that passive restoration, that is not planting, just letting nature do its work, can work. This was taken in 1970s, and this is relatively recently. And so this area has been fenced off from grazing and burning, and you can see what's happened. It's slow, but nevertheless, forest tree cover is coming back. But mostly we do a lot of planting as well. And so this is just showing, again, talking about the community. This is the local football club helping us plant trees. These are nursery school students helping us plant trees. These are the patrollers that come in and help us as well. So I think, again, this is a bit of an old picture, but I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hazel, for your presentation. I think we all agree that it was so insightful, and we would love for you to go on because I'm just rapt attention. But thank you for the work that you do there along with your team, and for highlighting the importance of community involvement in, actively restoring the area to ensure that the long-term survival, given its importance for so many of the local communities. So with the time we have left, I would like to invite anyone who has any questions. I did see that Mohammed had a question. I think he was very inspired by the area. So he asked, do you have any accommodation for visitors in the Ngelnyaki forest? Can people come?
We absolutely do. And visitors are always more than welcome. Yes, and if anyone is serious about visiting, just get in touch with us and we can definitely help with logistics. And I can see Isti and Misa nodding.
Oh, okay, good. I can see, how do I put it?
We would love to have you visit.
Yeah, okay. I also raise my hand. I raise my hand. I raise my hand. Can I speak?
Mohammed.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm listening and following actually from Abuja, and it is so exciting to hear about Ngelnyaki, and the forest in Taraba and Adamawa. It is an area where I grew up, and I'm very passionate about it. So, and I thank Hazel for all the good work you have been doing. We have been interacting with you on Twitter, I guess, for
That's
quite
right.
some time. Yeah, and I hope to visit maybe this December. I know the general area very well. I know Yelwa, and I know the other areas. What's the other area? Hainare, up there, where you have issues with some of the cattle herders. I think at one point I also intervened. So I'm looking forward to visiting and interacting with all the team that you have on the plateau. Thank you very much for this session.
Well, thank you very much for listening. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, I see
And we look
have
forward to hosting you.
a question from Ananya. Hi, Hazel. Has the timing of fruiting and flowering changed over the years in the forest?
It has. Timing has changed quite a lot as well. And again, it's very species specific. So some species flower earlier, some later. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can say really. Yeah, but it's been major disruption.
If you would like to know more, the Nigerian Montane Forest Project has a website. It's called the Nigerian Montane Forest Project.org. And in their publications, Hazel, along with a few colleagues, they recently did publish on changes in quantity and timing of foliar and reproductive phenology of tropical dry forests. So I believe this is linked to the things you've been talking about here, Hazel. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's the study, yes. Yeah.
So check out their publications if you'd like to know more about the research results coming from their studies in the area. Anyone else with any questions, please feel free to text in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute your microphone and ask.
I have a question. Yes. Well, first of all, congratulations on these 21 years of work in the Nigerian mountains, Hazel. I would like to ask you about what educational methodologies or practical activities have had the greatest impact on the community.
The greatest impacts, well, they've been, I think in terms of school children, I think it's tree planting and the nursery, like the project, children know that the project is always welcoming to them. And they've learned a lot about conservation and they get actively involved in projects, particularly tree planting, but other things as well. And I think that has really had an impact. And that is noticeable in that some of those children have now moved on and are thinking about careers in conservation and biodiversity.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. And I had more questions before, but you already answered them with your presentation. Thank you so much.
All right, I think we have time for the final two questions in the chat by Agbula and Yusuf. So the first one is, your analysis shows increase in flowering but decrease in fruit. What is responsible for this and how does it impact beekeeping?
It's a really good question. And we don't know why. There are different hypotheses, but why flowering is relatively unchanged, but fruiting in some species particularly is dropping off. And so why should that be? It could be that the signals for flowering, or it could be that flowering is sensitive to signals that aren't affected by climate change as much as those of fruiting. And it could be to do with moisture, and fruiting needs more moisture than flowering. It could be due to nutrients as well. So we're not quite sure how to answer that, and that needs more investigation. But I think what it is that different parts of the phenology cycle are influenced by different signals.
Hope
that
answers
helps.
the question. All right, then the final question is from Yusuf, and he asked, does the Nigerian Montane Forest Project provide scholarship for the people of the Taraba or Nigeria at large?
It's a really good question. Well, we don't have a particular scholarship. Like, obviously, we have helped individuals where we can, and some of our staff we've paid for to help them go to classes and that sort of thing. But we can't, at the moment, we can't afford to give scholarships. Unfortunately, it's as much as we can do at the moment just to keep going. But I really wish that we could. And we're working to try and get a more stable financial basis, and then giving scholarships would definitely be priority. We've obviously thought about it.
All right, I see one more hand, and Hazel, do you have 2 more minutes to answer a final question? All right, then Abdul Wakil, I think he has a question for you. Yeah, please feel free to unmute and ask.
Hi, Hazel. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is, how do I get involved in the project? I'm actually from Nigeria, but I'm based in Auckland. And I currently work as a research assistant at AUT. I think I sent you an email maybe a few weeks ago.
You've written to me, and I've been away, and you're first on my list to answer because I was thrilled to get your email. It's certainly not gone unnoticed, and I'm going to send you a considered reply because we would absolutely love to have your involvement in the project.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about it.
I really, would love
Thank
that.
you.
And I was so happy when I read it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Right, amazing. Again, I think on behalf of everyone, thank you so much, Hazel, for providing this insightful summary of so many things that still can be said about the Nyaki Forest Project and all the work you do together with the community. So for anyone who would like to learn more, please feel free to reach out to Hazel directly. Otherwise, you can always follow us on our social medias at Embrace the Earth, as well as the Nigerian Montane Forest Project.org to learn more about the really great and important work they're doing. And with that, again, thank you so much for taking the time to present. Thank you everyone for joining. And this session is recorded, so please feel free to share it as soon as we publish it on our LinkedIn and our website. Let everyone know. And if you would like to learn more, please keep an eye on all the socials as we will be promoting the project and all the great work that they do.
Thank you. Thank
Could
you
I
so
just
much.
say, I would really like to thank Embrace the Earth. I really appreciate how you're helping us and managing our social media. It's a huge boost to the project, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Hazel. Thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you so much, Shelly.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye.